grew older, he began to become more defiant. Lou said it was his hidden frustrations from previous lifetimes that were constantly showing up, as he was now permanently placed where he inwardly knew he did not want to be. He would use his energy behind an array of attitudes against others, and especially Suma and his family, as he became very jealous of their abilities. Because Tunuk had such an adamant arrogance, he was not shown anything from the real guides, as some of the other villagers who took a real interest in their dreams and experiences. This lifetime, for all involved, was a stepping stone for future lifetimes. Tunuk had a sister and brother, Yzma and Food Room. Yzma was Nice, who was Tunuk's older sister, and Food Room was his older brother. Tunuk looked up to Food Room, as they would create things together and sometimes play tricks on others, even their sister, Yzma. Yzma was more of a motherly type, as she hung around her parents more than she did her two brothers. She had the sweet heart, which her two brothers would take advantage of at times. This is but a little view of some of the situations all of us go through for lifetimes to eventually wake up at a certain point and become more aware. Scene 15. As I was watching this as young Dwayne, Lou told me that all three of these people would have an effect on me in this lifetime. As I am viewing this lifetime from where I am today in 2011, I have already dealt with the three of these people as adults in this lifetime. Since I was 19, I have been in construction, but sometime in 2005, I began my new business ventures, which is where I am today. In 2008 and into 2009, I once again met these people as they became part of what I had put together as part of my adventurous experiences with the material worlds. In my dream visions, I was shown how these people would soon come into my arena of experience once again. As I began meeting new people in the other worlds, Rebazar, Paul, and Yabel were guiding me through an array of experiences. Tunuk today is a fellow I will call Dave. Food Room has become Harry, and Yzma has become Sandy. These three would start an episode in my life that would make a very huge impression on me. One night I went to sleep and suddenly found myself outside above my house and looking up in the sky. Then the boys appeared from the distance and moved up to me. "Let's take a little trip into the map of time," said Yabel, as I felt myself being taken with them higher in the sky. Somewhere, we were soon into another place of extraordinary description. We were all floating above what I was seeing as a gigantic map, that of many different areas that stretched in all directions to what appeared to be like an infinite nature. The giant map was like those on the earth that one would find in a world atlas. We went down to the huge and ongoing surface. And as we did, I suddenly saw my street name on the map as we landed right on it. Here is the center of attention, which is you, Dwayne. Look around and you will see what is coming in your direction, said Yabel as he pointed to several people walking my way. I could tell that they were not really conscious of what they were doing as they were approaching, but more so just moving along in my direction. As they arrived in front of me, they just stood and looked around as though they were wondering where they were. Then the boys and I began to rise above the area and watch these three people go about doing all sorts of rather funny things. I found it very humorous as I watched. This is how many things are seen from the real side of the curtain. As a person is involved with their personal life and the physical, especially those who have no real awareness about the other worlds, we can see everything they are doing and also their intent to what they will do. When you relate to this to those you are working with, they do not understand or even accept what you are telling them, as most who you are dealing with only want something for themselves, and so they eventually take themselves out of the picture of what you are creating, said Rebazar as I continued to watch. Then, as they walked about, there appeared pop-up screens beside some of the places they would stop at. I could see that it was like watching a movie with what the scenes were and possibly would be experiencing. Rebazar said that each person has free will, and at any given time they have a multitude of choices they are seeing within themselves that become actual experiences as they decide their own directions and fate. These three were more so in the dark and just grabbing at straws, so to speak, at what seemed to be in front of them, as they did not have the full picture. As you are deciding the adventure of procuring the valuable instruments you have come to know from the experiences with that other culprit, Don, who you dealt with a year ago, these three people will help to assist you in providing the better connections you need to get your design project into a reality. As you can see, Dwayne, we have set this situation up so that all of you will find each other. And then from here, you will figure out how to creatively put this project together. This will take some time, and so your little self will learn a lot of patience in the meantime. There will be so much more to all of this than what is being demonstrated now, but it is always best to live the moment and take a step at a time and not rush what will eventually come anyhow, said Rebazar. As I watched, each one of the boys explained to me about the personalities of these three people and how they came from my past. I was shown the karmic baggage each one carried and some of the attitudes they liked the most about themselves. All of what they were telling me was showing up, as it was a lot to look at and take in. So this was one of many nightly experiences with these people before I actually met them in the physical. The boys showed me how they create the situations for people to meet and how some of their karmic debts are dissolved. Rebazar said that most of the people on the earth are like this. No matter what they have believed or decided, they are asleep to the many other worlds of their own creation. Rebazar said that what I was seeing and what they call the map of time is one of the many places a person is experiencing, whether they know it or not, and it can appear differently to each person. I found it also fascinating, as the boys had mocked up the situation for me to learn from. You may not understand this, Dwayne, but the future view is also watching what we are viewing and learning from these experiences. Even though the real awareness already has the experiences, and because there is so much information to be distributed through all your bodies and levels, it takes a lot of years to filter down to a usefulness in the physical senses and mind. No one can learn real truth in 1 or 2 lifetimes, as life is too big, and it takes hundreds and thousands of lifelong experiences to establish ourselves with the whole of life. The masses are led into dungeons of old and outdated knowledge, which they consider to be something special and divine, when in reality, It is all nothing more than a process to keep them unaware of their true potential, said Lou. Wow, cool. So I am a lot smarter than I look. Is that right? I said as we both laughed and laughed. Something like that, Sonny, she said as she giggled. I am assuming it will be hard for those who will eventually be reading this to relate to what is taking place. So they must learn to perceive with their real awareness and not allow their mind to try and decipher what the mind will never understand any which way. This real adventure is for the sole purpose of demonstrating there is so much more to life than what a person considers from their earthly situations and the lifetimes they have wanted to make things work out for themselves under the lash and rule of the authoritarians. Most people are afraid to dream of something they really want to be. And so here is the real education of a definite confirmation that it is okay to do so. But just like in the movie Hook, where Wendy grew old and Peter Pan rediscovered himself, it has always been my experience with many, and even Heather, who once accepted all of the wonderful experiences she was having with the real guides, but has put it all aside for just being like everyone else. Again, most people are too afraid to dream big and then take the risk to live the real adventure like Rebazar and the real guides. As I was doing what I called my funny business, Heather thought it was way too far out and could not at all understand what it is from all that I tried to explain to her. And at the same time, she had determined that I was not altogether anymore, because I was no longer playing my life straight like the contractor I should be according to her, as I was having the best time of my life learning what most people have no idea even exists on this planet. Anyhow, my life was more so than ever about the adventure that I wanted to be living, as I had already been in construction for more than 35 years, and it was time for a new life, a new adventure, and more fun. I was still doing a few jobs, but it was all dwindling away from me, as the economy was changing. Going back many years for a moment, I did a large job for some people and acquired some very interesting particulars, which at the time I did not understand their meaning or value. Now, back to the future. I had built up a lot of contacts, and from one of them I learned that he knew the person I had met over a year ago, who I will call Andrew, who understood the valuable instruments that I had. Then learned that Andrew had died, but his wife was still around somewhere. My contact had known her for years. As we began to talk about our lives one day, the conversation came around to Andrew and his wife, which he knew, and from that time I would be into a whole new arena of experience. I was then introduced to a lady that knew Andrew's wife. And lo and behold, it was Sandy, who was Yzma, way back when as Natu's daughter, and was one of these three people I saw in my experience with the boys. From the past and present with Lou and the view and the boys, and to this very moment, I was soon talking with Sandy on the phone one night, had told her about my relationship with Andrew a year or so before he passed away. She told me her story about all the years she knew Andrew and his wife, and she knew exactly where his wife lived, whose name was Kimberly. Sandy was not familiar with the type of business I was in and how I was pursuing it, and so I brought her up to date on the particulars. It took her a while to understand, as she was your basic conventional thinking type person who, which you might say got all of her information from the 6 o'clock news. Sandy is one of those tan people from down south, and not a whitey like so many Americans. I always liked the so-called third world people. That is how the authoritarians have rated them. Anyhow, I finally met with Sandy and Kimberly in the city where they both lived. I told Kimberly my relationship with her late husband, Andrew, and one of the projects I was involved with him, which never transpired. Of course, this was our first meeting, and I really didn't expect anything to come of it. Several weeks later, all three of us met again, and I told Kimberly more about two other people who had known Andrew, as one of them was a famous and secret operative with the U.S. government who I had met years ago. Several years prior to meeting with Kimberly, I had met Kern and his wife, Layla, in a very interesting situation, which I am keeping hush-hush. Kern was the secret agent dude, and his wife, Layla, did all their bookkeeping with all the cases they mysteriously worked on. Kern was originally born in Germany and was actually in the Hitler Youth, as he told me a lot of his life as we got to know each other. He eventually made his way to America and did all sorts of things, most of which I cannot remember all he related. I wanted to write a book about his life at the time, and this would have been around 2005. It seemed like a good idea then, but I was very busy writing my other books and still going through my midlife crisis, so to speak.